Welcome to the Hockey Podcast. I am Luke Lipinski.
And I'm Doug Cannon.
On this week's show, we'll look at round one of the playoffs where guys are skating with broken noses already and players refer to opposing coaches as overweight sea creatures.
I'm not fat. I'm just tusky. And we'll also take a look at Rule 63 where clearing the puck becomes delay of game. Dumb.
All that and more. Let's drop the puck on episode 5. Well, Doug, here we are about a week into the first round of the Stanley Cup Playoffs. I have to say, we got 8 series going on. None of them have disappointed. I mean, you expect so much. If you're like me, you expect everything from the Stanley Cup Playoffs. There's so many different storylines, so much different drama that plays out, the best hockey that you're going to see all year in any venue, anywhere in the world. And this year, through a week, I almost feel like my expectations have been exceeded.
Yeah, we talk about it off the air a lot, and it's different when the mics are on, but shortened season, I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
I didn't know how teams were going to look going into the playoffs once they started. But that playoff intensity is there. That competition, I want to win is there. I didn't know if it was going to kind of gradually go past the quarterfinals into the semis and then we'd finally see it. I'm with you. No disappointment. It's there.
Because we really should be in the second half of the regular season right now, but everybody's flipping the switch. And I'll tell you what, if you don't flip the switch, you're out in the first round. So let's start in the East. I'll leave this up to you. What's been the best series so far? And I guess we'll just start there.
Well, the East really is head-to-head.
They've all been good.
They've all been good series. I mean, Washington's pulled out ahead of the Rangers in the early going, but there isn't a series here. I thought after Game 1 of the Toronto-Boston series, I went, okay, well, that's going the way I expect. And then Toronto came back in the second game, and it's like, okay,
yeah.
we could have a series. I want to really temper that. I mean,
let's
Toronto
start
looked
there.
good.
I thought Toronto looked good.
They look good. I joked about it. I said, okay, well, Toronto got the game that they should get, and Boston will win the next 3, and the series will be over. But
spoken like a true Leafs fan.
But, after watching the game and watching Toronto play, I'm like, wait a minute, they can hang. And it was in Boston.
It was in Boston. Boston is so weird to me this year because I look at the team and the way they're made up and the fact they won the Cup a couple years ago and just how tough they are. And it's like that of all the teams might be the team I would want to play least in a 7-game series because they're just going to beat you up. But there's guys on Toronto with extra incentive to beat Boston specifically. Phil Kessel, you don't think he's tired of hearing about that trade and how, Boston got Sagan and Hamilton and like part of Toronto, like the city they own now or whatever. Kessel has looked good, and for a guy with his build, he's fast.
And he got in trouble before the series started. Remember, he didn't talk to the media.
Yeah.
Because he didn't want to talk about the trade and all that. He just wanted to play. And now he's playing, and I agree with you. And then there's Lupul.
I mean, that guy, you look at his career numbers, and he was decent in Anaheim. I mean, He had some good years.
Right.
But ever since he's come over to Toronto, just phenomenal. Last year, phenomenal. This year, limited action, but phenomenal. And he wasn't on the best terms with Randy Carlyle when he left Anaheim. And so they get back together here in Toronto, and it's working.
It's working really, really well. The only one, now, last week I picked the Rangers over Washington because I thought, hey, Washington's a one-man show. Ovi was like on a streak like no one's ever seen before. And I didn't know if he was going to fold the team into the success of the Capitals. I guess I'm wrong.
Well, this has been an odd series. This was the one I thought would be the best, certainly in the East.
I thought this one was just going to be toe-to-toe every single game.
And it could still be. Washington won that first game. The Rangers need to score. At a certain point, it was great. Somebody on Twitter the other day, after Game 2, tweeted out, the Rangers would be a really good team if they could score, too. You have to be able to score. And this is what worries me about the Rangers. I picked the Rangers, too. And we're the only 2 people I know of that picked the Rangers. Everybody else picked Washington. They were 15-2-2.
But Washington's an easy pick.
They are, right?
Right.
The Rangers come in as the 6th seed, but, they finish strong as well. Anytime you have a goalie like Lundqvist, you have to feel like you have a good chance to win a playoff series, but he's played well and they're losing. And that's what worries me if I'm the Rangers.
It goes back to what you said when you first brought it up. It goes back to scoring. That team is so talented, and that's why I picked them. They've got depth. They've got a great coach. They got a great goaltender. Nash had a shot in the second game where that puck should have gone in, and it didn't go in.
And if it goes in, the series is 1-1.
Right.
So, anytime you're dealing with overtime games, we've already seen quite a few, which just sidebar, is the best thing in sports, overtime playoff hockey. When you're dealing with a series that has overtime games, you see how close the series is. If this series is 1-1 going back to New York, everybody's talking about how the Rangers have this completely in hand now. Now they're in a tough spot, and I don't know. I mean, I'll get your thoughts on this later as to who has been the most impressive team so far through these first few games, but I almost wonder. I wouldn't pick them to win the cup, but I wonder if this might be Ovechkin's year to really make a deep run.
Yeah, well, A, it's about time.
That is very true.
B, because I picked the Rangers, I'm still going to stand behind the Rangers.
I wouldn't be shocked.
But let's be very cliche-ish. Is that a word?
It is now.
It is now. The first two games were in Washington. It's supposed to be 2-0.
It is. I've never understood the logic of the series doesn't start till the road team wins a game, because the series can end without the road team winning a game, right? But Game 7, yeah, if it comes down to it, is in Washington, but I would not be surprised at all if the Rangers even this up and by Thursday it's 2-2.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can see that happening. So what I'm saying is, okay, I picked the Rangers, so I'm gonna find it and spin it any way I can. But it's supposed to be 2-0. The home team is supposed to win at home. It's up to the road team to take one away, like the Isles did to the Penguins. They took one away from them. That gave them the home ice advantage. Yeah. So then what happens? Penguins go into the Coliseum today. Happy Cinco de Mayo.
Yes.
Go into the Coliseum today and get it back.
Yeah, we talked about this last week. I mean, you openly admitted your Maple Leaf fandom, and I now begrudgingly admit my Penguin fandom. But we should also note that when we both have very close ties to the Coyotes, this kind of came came to light for me this week. I think it's okay to like two teams in the sport if they're on opposite sides of the country.
Okay.
I sound like that guy who dates women on opposite sides of the country. It's okay. But, I mean, the Penguins and the Coyotes never play. But what I realized watching the Penguins this week is my relationship with those two teams is so different. When the Coyotes do well, I'm proud of them. When they do badly or when they lose, I'm like, there's a couple things they could fix. I just hate the Penguins when they lose. It's not fun.
Because that's the team you grew up with, right? So your heart's attached to it. Yeah,
and I think that, I mean, you watch the way that series has unfolded. They came out in the first game against the Islanders, and New York looked like they didn't want to be there.
And everybody's like, it's over in 4.
Yeah, this is 5-0 in the first game. Right. It could have been worse. And then they bring Crosby back, which to me, I was like, I don't know that I bring him back. I bring him back when you need him.
And what did he do in game 2?
Scored twice in the first
9 minutes.
He was instantly, I love these stats that you just find on the internet, instantly was tied for the NHL lead in goals after like 3 minutes of ice time.
Right.
So he looks great in game 2. The Penguins have this thing where I don't
Flurry.
know if we'll get to him. I don't know if it's too much talent up front, but when Crosby's playing, they tend to just sit back and watch.
You know, that happens a lot in teams that have that talented guy. We'll just give him the puck and we'll let him do it. Whereas when that's a great point. When he's not in the roster, everybody else has got to work. They've got to do their thing.
They looked great in game 1. I mean, there was goals where there was 3 guys behind the buck up, 3 Penguins behind him.
Yeah.
And then Crosby, and it's not through any fault of Crosby's. He's the only guy that played in game 2. And he's a player that passes. He doesn't shoot. It's not like Ovechkin came back. You're going to watch him. You have to play with him. Otherwise, he's not as effective.
We had that conversation about the goal scorers last year and about guys like Crosby and St. Louis, how they make their teams better because they do pass. And yes, you have to be ready. You can't be going down the wing and not expect a pass from 87.
It's coming.
Yeah.
So just on that series now, as we're recording this, the Penguins are up 2-1. But this is a team I think everybody looks at and they say, well, yeah, they'll go to the cup. Look at that talent. Been out of the playoffs the first round each of the last 2 years. And it's followed this same script where look dominant in game 1. I mean, they lost to Tampa a couple years ago, up 3-1 in the first round. Look dominant. Then they almost seem to take the foot off the gas because they're like, this is so easy. And the second they get challenged, they just seem stunned. Game 2 is a perfect example. Now the Islanders believe they can win that series, which they didn't after game 1. And they easily could.
Well, in all transparency, I was watching today's game with my son, and he's a Penguin fan.
It's a good kid.
And the third goal that made it 4-3, all he yelled out was, come on, Flurry. Because he didn't move on the shot. He just didn't move.
No,
and to me, that's going to be the series. Flurry, the goaltending on the Penguins has got to come together. It's got to be there. Or else New York could squeak in.
They easily could. And no disrespect to the Islanders, but they're not winning another round. They go out and play Boston or Montreal.
Yeah, I mean, the Islanders could get to round 2 only because Pittsburgh failed.
Yeah.
Because there is just stats, season, players, rosters. I mean, today, third game into the series, John Tavares finally scored.
And the Islanders had already won a game.
Right.
Which is it's the opposite of the Lundqvist thing. He wasn't even scoring and they were winning.
Now, Tavares is, he got hurt, but still, I mean, Crosby steps on the ice for his team and scores right away. I thought it was great that Pittsburgh had shut him down.
You should be able to win when you do that.
And you should be able to win because he is what makes that team. And it goes back to the Washington series. Ovi's what makes that team goes. So, I mean, Tavares has finally got a taste. We'll see what happens in Game 4.
So he's more dangerous now, too. And the last thing on Flurry, because I know you've personally heard my rant on him. So I won't go too much into it, but I will just say this. I'm not saying he doesn't belong in the NHL, but he's not a great fit for that team. Because he is a goalie that we saw it in Game 1, looked great. Shutout. They didn't need a shutout. They scored 5 goals.
Right.
Game 2 looked terrible, and they score 3 goals and lose. The way he plays, he made some great saves in Game 3, and he also looked terrible in Game 3 at times. He kind of nullifies all the offense you have up front. If he's going to have a great game, you're going to win with 1 or 2 goals. If he's going to have a bad game, we saw it last year, you can score 7 and lose.
Right.
He needs to be on a team like Calgary that needs that. That's my rant on him. Trust me, it'll be worse when they get knocked out.
Let's wrap up the East with the Ottawa-Montreal series.
This might be the best series.
I couldn't agree more.
I guess we have to
starting with the Walrus.
The bug-eyed fat walrus.
And to quote Coach McLean, I am not fat, I am husky. It was a great line.
I know, that was better than the original line. So in case you don't follow hockey, but you're listening to a hockey podcast for some reason, there's the Eric Greiba hit on Lars Eller in Game 1.
Right.
Thoughts on the hit?
Okay, well, let's be honest. We watched the hit before we went to record.
Very slow, broken down.
Down. Even in real time, it was a clean hit.
I heard a very interesting argument on this that I didn't share with you before the show on purpose, but I'll give it to you now. Eric Greiba is a guy that I hadn't even really heard that much of before this series, so that tells you how much he has to fight to get in or out of the lineup.
Right.
Basically, his options on a play like that are make the hit, which if you watch, I mean, he tucks his arm down so he's not leading with the elbow like some other guys.
Shoulders down.
Otherwise, he can let him go past, or he can try and just swipe at the puck, which is maybe 50% chance at best. If he doesn't make that hit, and he made the hit, got suspended. If he doesn't make the hit, he's probably a healthy scratch in Game 2.
Correct.
And so you have to factor that in. Now, it's horrible to see Lars Eller laying there on the ice. I mean, that's not what hockey needs.
No, but I mean, after the hit, unfortunately, he fell awkwardly. And I think that's where the injury to me did not come from the hit. The injury came from the fall to the ice.
I would agree with that.
And then Greiba gets a 2-game suspension because of that.
And I feel like we've seen worse hits that haven't had as bad of results.
Yeah, we have. And I think once we move over to the West, we'll address that. But this series is going to go toe-to-toe. They're getting good goaltending at both ends. Both teams are playing hard to playing strong.
They don't like each other now.
They don't like each other. There's a lot of grit going on here. This is playoff hockey, and it goes back to the opening statements from both of us. It's like, I didn't know what to expect this season in the playoffs. And playoff hockey is a whole new season. And with that, I'm going to segue to the West, and I'm going to segue to the Anaheim-Detroit series. Anaheim, to me, was flat for the whole month of April. They looked horrible. They just didn't look like they wanted to play anymore. And now I'm calling them the sleeping giant. I'm like, okay, now I'm watching the Anaheim I thought I was going to see in the month of April ramping up to the playoffs. They flipped the switch. They're big. They're strong. They're fast. They can score. They're skilled. They've got it all going, and they're giving Detroit every inch of it.
Anaheim was a tough team coming in, and we both picked Detroit.
Right.
And I said on the show last week, and I mean I said this to you before the season started, I thought Anaheim could easily go to the Stanley Cup if not win it. So it's such a difficult series to pick because You pick Detroit and people are like, like Anaheim, you don't think they're good? No, I think Anaheim could win the Stanley Cup this year. It was just they're playing Detroit, and Detroit could still win the series. Anaheim could still go off. But to me, the Ducks are the team that, like you just said, weren't finishing strong. We didn't know what we were going to get from them. They were kind of a wild card. They flipped the switch. This is Sunday. To me, they are the most impressive team so far in these playoffs. Factor in who they're playing. Yes, Chicago's steamrolling Minnesota. I don't really care because Minnesota, it's not a series. We knew that coming in.
Yeah, we knew that.
But I think Anaheim with that size, they get decent goaltending. Solani's still a factor. Getzlaf is playing like you expect him to play in the situation.
That's why he's wearing the C.
That's a dangerous team. To me, the best chance of anybody to knock Chicago out in the West.
And the one, in the one game that Detroit won, they almost lost.
Yeah, I mean, they gave up 3 goals in the third period.
Gave up 3 goals in the third period, and then, they won it in overtime. But by all rights, Anaheim should have won that game too.
It easily could have, and this is another one of those hits. We don't know what's going to happen with Justin Abdelkader, but in my opinion, a worse hit than the Eric Greiba hit.
It was brutal. He left his feet, man. He looked like Superman. All you needed was a cape on him.
Elbows out, too.
I looked at that hit. I looked at it full speed. I looked at it slow-mo. That was a dirty hit.
It was.
There was no reason whatsoever for him to leave his feet the way he did.
And it was a dirty hit in a 0-0 game, and it got a 5-minute major, and Anaheim scored seconds later.
And the difference between that and the Eller hit was he was lucky that the corner was crowded and Lindemann went down not awkwardly.
Yeah.
He still left the game, never returned, but the way he was hit, it could have been so much...
It could have been a lot worse.
I was going to say so much more, and that's bad grammar.
And we're all about grammar on this show. I mean, we really are.
But that hit could have been ugly. It could have been really, really ugly, and it didn't. So Abdelkader was very, very lucky in that sense.
And Ludman goes down, gets back up, and then can't skate. So it's not like no damage was done. But,
right.
Yeah, just you compare the two hits, and again, the Eller result is so much worse, and that's sensationalized, and people that don't follow hockey
when you fall face first in the ice, it hurts.
And then you have the Ottawa Sun putting his face on the cover saying Ottawa draws first blood, which is
not good.
The ultimate in just all class, which is another reason Ottawa is becoming less likable in these playoffs. But yeah, Abdelkader, I mean, not only that from Detroit's perspective, but from Anaheim's perspective, it's another good sign when a team takes liberties with your players, you make them pay on the scoreboard, and they did instantly.
It speaks the loudest, right? The scoreboard is the loudest voice in the building.
Should we transition to Chicago, Minnesota?
I don't even want to talk about them. I mean, Chicago's just going to walk away with that series. I know I sound like an arrogant SOB, but...
You're not a Chicago fan, though.
I'm not a Chicago fan, and I'm not a Minnesota fan. I mean, they bought their way into the playoffs. They're there. They're going to be out in the first round. They might win one game.
I don't know. If they were going to, I think it was game 1. We talked about Minnesota for about 3 seconds last week, and we just dismissed them instantly. And then the first game started. Josh Harding steps in last second, which I will say this. Had he stepped in and Minnesota somehow made a run to the Stanley Cup, it would be one of the greatest playoff stories ever.
Right.
And I thought he played well in game 1, but the very simple fact is this is a great matchup for Chicago. They're already arguably the best team in the NHL, and they're playing a team that can't score more than 2 goals.
They won the President's Cup, man.
But it's not, if Chicago later on plays Anaheim or Detroit or whoever, a team that can score with them, we're seeing it with Pittsburgh and the Islanders. The Islanders can score with Pittsburgh. Minnesota can't score. Chicago's going to get 3 goals all the time, and that's all they need.
Yeah, I mean, I also think Chicago has goaltending.
They do.
I think Minnesota might get 1 game and make the series go to 5.
I'd be interested to see
so
when.
We'll see if that happens. San Jose is playing strong. They stole 2 from Vancouver in Vancouver. That's huge.
It's just your annual Vancouver meltdown.
And I'm not going to blame the players.
They didn't play badly. Vancouver hasn't played badly in the series.
I think Vancouver is struggling because of management. The whole Luongo situation, it's just, you need good goaltending in the playoffs. And the way they mishandled him, the whole goaltending situation, I think it's coming back to bite him in the butt.
You don't want to go into the playoffs with unresolved issues on your team.
No.
Because they will be exposed. And I'm not even sure that they have been exposed yet. And I think that's why I think it could get worse. Vancouver can't play hockey to their best abilities at home because the fans expect the worst now. The fans are very vocal in Vancouver.
Right.
And they dislike their own team. You see fan bases that are like, oh, that's horrible. We got that call against us. Vancouver fans turn on their team instantly.
Okay, so you got a roster of 20-plus players in Vancouver. A lot of them make a lot of money. But at the end of the day, they're all human. They read the comments the Vancouver fans are saying. San Jose steals 2 games. You're going to Northern California to play Game 3. That place is going to be rocking because your team just stole 2 games from Vancouver. That building's going to be rocking. And if they get Game 3 and they go up 3-zip,
that's over.
It's over. Vancouver's, their heads are going to drop. They're going to be just not able to get past that.
And to your point on Luongo, I get that he's the contract is ridiculous to try and trade. I think he's a better goalie than I think most Vancouver fans think. But at the end of the day, Vancouver has a lot of talent on their roster. 2 of their most talented players can't play at the same time. So, I mean, yeah, Corey Schneider's hurt right now, so maybe it's working out better. They're not starting Eddie Lack in goal in the playoffs or whatever. But let's just say they're both healthy. I'd rather have Corey Schneider or Luongo and then players I got in a trade for the other one.
Right.
Because, yeah, Vancouver, I look at them and I'm like, this is just an extremely talented team. They've got Kessler, Sedin, and nobody. Who else can you really rely on for scoring? Rafi Torres just steps in for San Jose, and he's somebody they picked up at the deadline. He comes in and wins Game 2.
Right.
Vancouver doesn't have a guy like that. They have Ryan Kessler and nobody else right now.
I mean, we all know Rafi likes the playoffs.
And I picked Vancouver.
And then we go to the Blues Kings game.
This is a playoff podcast. There's no Lakers.
Yeah.
That might be the best series of all.
I think next to Ottawa, Montreal, that's my favorite.
It's I think the casual hockey fan that isn't like rooting for one specific team, that doesn't have a specific rooting interest, probably likes Penguins Islanders because it's almost like indoor soccer at this point. There's just goals constantly. But this is playoff hockey.
This game is end-to-end, not game, but this series is end-to-end hockey. It's physical. It's intense. They don't like each other. We spoke beforehand. I noticed in watching the game, LA was just pounding the tar out of St. Louis. They finished the game with 53 hits.
And it wasn't an overtime game.
53 hits. That's how much this game has intensified in the playoffs.
The hits are harder in the playoffs, too. So make sure you factor that in. And, I mean, here we are. We're 3 games in. There's been 7 goals scored total in this series. And it's, to me, exactly what you would expect. Except St. Louis leads, and St. Louis had dropped 10 of 11 to LA coming into this series. But we threw the stat out last week. LA 19 home wins this year, 8 road wins, and they go out on the road and lose the first 2 games. And I don't care if you won the Stanley Cup last year or not. It's tough to come back from 2-0. That's too big of a hole. They can still do it.
I'm impressed that they had 53 hits. The question coming off the back of that is, can you keep that up? Because that's what prevented St. Louis from scoring in the third game, was that every time St. Louis had the puck, they were knocked off the puck. And there was some scrums in front of the net where they were just hammered. And I don't know if LA can keep that physical game going.
There's always the kind of caveat, too, of if a team has a ton of hits, that means they didn't have the puck enough. That wasn't the case in this game. This was just a physical game, and
St. Louis had 39 hits.
So that means nobody had the puck enough. It, to me, is interesting, though. We never saw LA face adversity last year in the playoffs. They led every series. They never trailed. Now they're down 2-0, and I like the way they responded in Game 3. But Jonathan Quick's another guy. He's played very well in these first 3 games. 2 very bad finishes. I mean, he basically scored the winning goal in Game 1 and allowed a really bad one in Game 2. But for 59-plus minutes every game, he's been very good, and you're still trailing the series.
Right. Well, and now I guess we'll just have to wait until next week when we do our follow-up episode to see who's in and who's out.
All right, we're back here, Doug. I want to throw you a bone here. I know you're very passionate on this subject, as am I. I've been raging about this rule since it came into existence. Rule 63, as I now know it, as most fans know it, it's the penalty that gets called when you have the puck in your zone and you go to throw it out and it goes up into the stands.
It doesn't necessarily have to be in your zone. It just has to be up in the stands. So let's get real formal with it.
Okay.
Section 9 dash other fouls.
So that right there. Other fouls. Something that falls into the category of other fouls is having this big of an impact on the playoffs already.
Rule 63 dash delaying the game. 63.1 delaying the game. A player or a team may be penalized when, in the opinion of the referee, is delaying the game in any manner.
If I was an attorney, I would look at this and point right to the word opinion, which is probably why you just enunciated it that way. That's so big. It's got to be
huge.
Opinion. Look, let's take a step back for a second. The penalty that is in question here happened in the Rangers game. It happened in the Blues game this week.
Right.
And it's the only penalty I can think of that's automatic. Like, if you high stick somebody and there's blood on their face, that's usually pretty automatic. But this is an automatic penalty. Why is that even in there? Opinion should always be a factor. The referee should always be able to use better judgment in any given situation and say, he's just trying to clear the puck.
Totally makes the rule subjective. Absolutely, I don't disagree with it. So let's go to 63.2.
This is where it gets bad.
Minor penalty. A minor penalty shall be imposed on any player, including the goalkeeper, who holds, freezes, or plays the puck with his stick, skates, or body in such a manner as to deliberately cause a stoppage of play. With regard to a goalkeeper, this rule applies outside of the goal crease area.
Now, this is where the spirit of the rule comes into play. Delay a game has to be a penalty. You can't just have the goalie running around gloving it and you can't have guys purposely, they're in trouble in their own zone, purposely shooting it into the stands.
Correct.
So delay of game should be a penalty. I'm not saying that's not the case, and I don't think you are either. But it's got to be enforced a different way.
Okay, so in that paragraph, to deliberately cause a stoppage of play. Deliberately. We go to paragraph 2. A minor penalty for delay of game shall be imposed on any player who deliberately shoots or bats using his hand or his stick the puck outside the playing area from anywhere on the ice surface, anywhere during the play or after a stoppage of play.
This is more the spirit of the rule. I get why this rule was put in, and I'm not saying the rule needs to be removed, but I can tell you this from talking to players, and you see it on TV. John Tortorella's facial expressions made it very clear over the weekend. I think a lot of people don't like this rule.
Well, again, it comes back to the word deliberately. Spirit of the rule, if somebody shoots the puck out of the arena during the play or after stoppage of play, especially after stoppage of play, well, that's an unsportsmanlike.
Yeah, it's completely different at that point.
Right. So then we'll go to the next one to wrap this up. When any player with both of his skates inside his defending zone shoots or bats using his hand or stick, the puck directly, non-deflected, out of the playing surface, except where there is no glass, i.e. the benches, a penalty shall be assessed for delaying the game. When the puck is shot into the player's bench, the penalty will not apply. When the puck is shot over the glass behind the player's bench, the penalty will be assessed. When the puck goes out of the playing area directly off a face-off, no penalty shall be assessed.
And just to add in there, if you shoot the puck into the opposing bench, you will have to deal with other consequences and not the referee for 2 minutes.
But then, even that, if I see a guy shoot it deliberately into the play, dude, that's either an unsportsmanlike or it's a delay game because you did it deliberately. I look at the St. Louis delay penalty. It was a clearing. He was just trying to clear it. It went down to center ice and hit the camera, the robo camera. Well, it was deflected.
So these are the two main examples we're looking at. The St. Louis game in a third period of a 1-0 game.
Right.
Not only puts St. Louis shorthanded, puts them 3-on-5 at that point. And yeah, LA didn't score. The final score was 1-0, but that's 2 more minutes, and especially 5. You're never going to score 5-on-3 when you're the team with the 3. That's 2 more minutes that St. Louis basically couldn't score.
Right.
For a penalty that, as I've said to you 1,000 times before, as a hockey player, I can go out there and I'm upset with an opposing player. I can just high stick him right in the face and get 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. Somebody has a breakaway, I can hook him from behind and get 2 minutes. Or I could be in trouble and try and clear the puck and it could hit a camera and go out and I get 2 minutes. Come on.
Yeah, but if I see a player skate and actually flip it over the glass, fine, you're purposely. It's the same as somebody going over and knocking the net off the post. That's a delay of game. Somebody holding the puck underneath his hand and not playing the puck, that's a delay of the game.
Delaying the game, as it were.
But if I'm just trying to clear it and it accidentally goes over, back to 63.1, the opinion of the referee. It's a subjective rule. Use common sense. He didn't purposely shoot it out over.
Exactly. And it's one of those situations where, we go back to the grab a hit for a second. Everybody's saying, well, everybody that's opposed to him getting suspended is saying that's a hockey move. He's just trying to make a hockey move and something went bad. Okay, this, obviously nothing goes bad. You're shooting the puck out and it's landing in the stands or wherever. It's a hockey move. You see so many times a player behind his net gets the puck and just goes to clear it and wrap it around the boards, and it climbs up the boards and goes out, and he's got 2 minutes.
Let's take the St. Louis example real quick and wrap this up. It's 5-on-4. I'm in my zone. What are you taught from the age of 5 when you lace up skates?
Don't throw it up the middle. Otherwise, you are Joe Pavelski in the San Jose game.
Clear the zone. Get the puck out of the zone. So if I'm in the corner, I'm going to whip it around the boards, and I'm going to try as hard as I can to get it over the blue line, unless I have a clear pass. That's all that happened. That player, pressure, 5-on-4, get it out of the zone. It went up and over. In their case, it hit the camera, but still, it's an act of desperation. I'm down a man already, and I need to get it out of my zone because I'm going to be 5-on-4 trapped in my zone. I need the puck out of my zone.
I'm doing what I've been taught, and I'll do you one better. The Rangers game, you can make the case Capitals were going to win anyway because they were playing better, but the Rangers lost in overtime in a game they probably had to have. They were shorthanded because one of their players tried to clear the puck out.
And it went over.
That doesn't seem right. And that's the one thing the NHL does. I'm so in favor of 99% of the changes the NHL has made over the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. This is the one I just don't like. But if it's going to seriously affect teams in these playoffs, it's already been a topic. We're not the only people talking about it.
Right.
If it's going to bring about change, it may have to sacrifice the Rangers or some other team. No team is immune to this. Chicago looks great right now, but what if the Western Conference Finals, they go out because Anaheim has a power play in overtime because of a play like this? There's going to be change.
I don't disagree.
Taking a break from the playoffs here for a second, Doug. We're looking ahead towards next season a little bit. If your team's already out of the playoffs, you're already looking ahead towards next season. Training camp 4.5 months, not too far. Going to be a lot more outdoor hockey next year. And I'm not sure how I feel about this quite yet.
I don't like it.
Really?
No, I don't like it at all.
We talked about this a few weeks ago when the Winter Classic was announced, which we agree, and I think everybody agrees, that's perfect.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And then if you want to have the Heritage Classic, that's enough.
That's fine.
Okay, because then the Heritage Classic caters to the Canadians, and it gives the Canadian network something to cover. But
you can play a hockey game in a parking lot and Canadians are going to watch. I mean, let's just be honest. But now you have the situation that's evolving where it seems like we're going to see a lot of outdoor hockey next year. Stadium Series is kind of coming into focus, and it's one of those things you have to find that balance. They're not messing with the Winter Classic, so that's fine. But to a typical, I guess, let me put it this way: who are they appealing to? Guys that aren't hockey fans, right? They're appealing to just sports fans out there that like outdoor hockey. They like the Winter Classic because that brings in football fans and NBA fans and whoever else on January 1st each year.
The thing I like about the Winter Classic is that it forces the league to spend a lot of money on marketing the game, marketing the two teams playing in that game. There's a big ramp up to it. HBO is involved with 24/7, so there's that runs parallel to the big game. There's just this huge ramp to the big game. Are you going to do that multiple times?
No, I mean, they're not going to. So that's the thing. I'm kind of on the fence about this right now. I'm going to be horribly opposed to it if this somehow affects them doing 24/7. If they just say, well, we're not going to do it because there's a lot of outdoor games now. And that's my fear. It's not going to happen this year. But what happens when we're to outdoor game number 5 of the season 4 years from now? Johnny NBA fan is not going to be tuning in to watch it.
Well, it's just going to be another outdoor game. It's just another game. I mean, the great thing about the Winter Classic was it's a regular season game, so the outcome mattered. These will be regular season games. The outcomes all matter. But then now that comes into it's just another regular season game. It's not special.
And typical hockey fans are not going to tune out because of this.
Oh, we're going to watch it.
I'm still going to watch, and they're going to sell out. But a lot of hockey games sell out anyway. I think I want to see how it unfolds because this 1 year coming up, I mean, it sounds like you're going to have Penguins, Blackhawks playing in Chicago, Soldier Field.
Okay, so that's game one. That's been announced. So March 1st, Soldier Field, the Pens and the Hawks.
And I will put this out there. The Winter Classic, I think, has to be the first outdoor game every year. I don't want that just mixed in with 5 or 6 other games.
So I did a little research, and I went to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's website, more formally known as the NOAA.
Oh, yeah, to the common listeners
or
out
the
there.
NOAA, however you want to.
This is research that I was not expecting.
Typically on March 1st, the average high for Chicago is 40 degrees. The low is 25. See, when they said March 1st, I was kind of worried about the weather.
Yeah, I mean, that's...
The average temperature March 1st for Chicago is 32 degrees with 0.2 of an inch of snow.
That's spring training time for Arizona and Florida.
That was the first thing that popped in my head. I'm going, March? Now, let's compound this. And they're talking about Dodger Stadium?
Yeah, Dodger Stadium is something...
Southern California?
I feel like I laugh every time I bring it up, but at the same time, I kind of want to go to that game.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I drove to Vegas, and I saw the one that they did outdoors behind Caesar's Palace. It was a nightmare. The ice was slushy. It was soft. It was wet. It was at night because you needed the cooler temperatures. You got big spotlights. I was batting moths most of the night because of the spotlights.
For the listeners at home, they can't see the hand gestures. Just know there's a lot of moth batting hand gestures going on right now.
And I should have researched March or April in Southern California, but those temperatures are 50, 60 degrees sometimes.
Side note on the Vegas game, is the ice conditions, are they the reason why that all the footage of that game looks like it was shot in like World War I? Like, it was 20 years ago. It wasn't 800 years ago.
Dude, the ice was bad.
Okay.
It was really bad, and I'm sitting in the stands watching it.
The film quality was bad back then, too.
Yeah, it was not good.
So, I mean, you can't have that happen. That was an exhibition game. You can't have Kings Ducks playing a meaningful game in Division C or whatever they're in next year, whatever they're calling it. And that could be the tiebreaker for who makes the playoffs and who doesn't. And they're like, well, yeah, that was the game where it was raining in the middle of the game. So there's some risk involved here, and I get why the NHL is doing it. And again, I like
Their comeback is going to be both teams are playing under the same circumstances.
Until somebody gets hurt.
Right.
I like the proactive attitude, though. I do like that. I like the trying to make new things.
They're going to have to convince me that it's a good thing. Right now, I'm not feeling good about it. The bad news for me is the series is called the 2014 Coors Light Stadium Series. It has a sponsor. It's not going away.
So it's locked in.
It's locked in.
You're not going to beat Coors Light, Doug Cannon.
No, I'm not.
All right, last note here, World Championships going on. Normally where Alex Ovechkin's playing his best hockey in May and June. He's not, though, this year, so Russia's got to do without him, and they seem to be doing okay.
Okay, for all you people that don't have a team in the playoffs, you're watching the World Championship to see if your players are doing okay.
Yeah, that's kind of a mixed bag. Ilya Kovalchuk is back where he's been so comfortable pretty much every year except last year. All those years on the Thrashers, he seemed to show up near the top of the IIHF scoring standings in May.
Right, well, let's just turn to the two North American teams. Canada is in Group S, in second place with a win and an overtime loss.
You might be asking yourself, wow, there's 16 divisions? No, there's 2.
And USA in Group H. After 2 games, is in second place behind Russia, only because of goal differential. Russia scored 10 goals in 2 games. USA scored 9 goals in 2 games, so they're not that far behind the Russians.
This goes back to what we were talking about near the end of the show last week. USA is now a fixture near the top of pretty much all world competitions. Canada lost to Switzerland.
Yeah, they lost to the Swiss.
I will say this, Matt Duchene in the game against, I think it was Austria. I don't even know now. But game 1 for Canada, which they won, Matt Duchene, you see how good he can be if he's on a team that has good players around him.
Oh, yeah, he's got hands, man. He's got hands.
So,
but, I mean, let's look at the top 6 teams. Switzerland, Canada, Norway in Group S.
Norway.
Russia, USA, and Finland in Group H. Yeah, Norway's just a little ahead of the Czechs.
They'll get caught by the Czechs and Sweden, and Slovakia will make a push in Group H. And those are really the 8 hockey powers right now.
Yeah, we'll see how this unfolds as they get closer to the finals.
But it's an alternative if you are up late at night. I'm sure somebody's refilling it.
Right.
You're tired of watching replays of Blackhawks Wild, you can watch this for a little
Yeah, because don't forget, it's in Helsinki.
Yeah, if you happen to be in Finland, you can just watch it in person.
All right. Until next time.
This is getting fun, and I know it's because of the playoffs, but this is starting to pick up.
And we'll tease everybody. There's a lot of stuff coming that hasn't raised its head yet.
Yes.
So we'll just leave it at that.
What you're hearing right now is the baseline.
This is the
raw
baseline. We're
product.
getting there. We're getting there. So stay tuned.
Talk to you next week.